Well, Netanyahu went on to the PBD podcast and admitted to genocide. The only problem was it wasn't the genocide he's committing, it was the Armenian genocide. Watch this.
The Holocaust has been recognized by 193 different countries, right? Everybody around the world. And in some countries, if you denied, you could do jail time. Many countries, you can do jail time a year, 5 years. But for anybody that doesn't recognize Armenian Assyrian genocide, if there's any country that I would have expected to be on the list that recognized the Armenian and the Assyrian and the Greek genocide, it would be Israel. Why haven't you yet recognized the Armenian, Assyrian, and the Greek genocide that the Turkish did to that community?
In fact, I think we have, because I think the Knesset passed a resolution to that effect.
I don't know if it's come from you, though. I don't know if it's come from the Prime Minister of Israel.
Yeah, I just did.
Okay.
Here you go.
All right. Well, thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate you. That's important to me. And I'm sure a lot of Armenians, Assyrians, and Greeks around the world appreciate you saying that.
Just kind of a bit of a bizarre question from Patrick. And Netanyahu saying, yeah, okay, we recognize that genocide, just so that you understand that genocide and the issue around that. Why Pat's like, oh, well, that means a lot to me. Thanks for admitting this, because a lot of people don't admit it. They actually deny that this genocide ever happened. Kind of sounds really familiar, right? And you would think that Patrick is trying to catch Netanyahu in kind of an aha, but he wasn't. This is actually the very end of the interview. And after Pat says, thanks, that means a lot to me, then he just wraps up the interview and says, Netanyahu, thanks for being here. Bye. So doesn't then press and say, well, the Armenian genocide sounds a lot like what you're doing right now to the Palestinians. The genocides that he's discussing are the ones from Turkey. Turkey committed these. This was from 1915 to about 1920, roughly. These three different slaughters. They went after the Assyrians, the Greeks, and also the Armenians, and in three different areas. Now, the Turks say that it was, that these Christian groups were rising up, that they were causing problems for the government, that they were not being loyal. They kind of gave all these excuses as to why they were fighting them, but really it was a land grab. Turkey wanted this land, wanted to ensure that, for example, that the Armenians didn't side with the Russians and end up carving out their own Armenia, which ultimately in the end they got a part of. But it was really more about land than anything. And what they did to the people were these forced marches into the Syrian desert. Many died of starvation and thirst. They did mass shootings and burnings. They confiscated property. They destroyed churches. They eradicated cultural presence. Does any of this sound familiar? Like, oh, we'll just starve you. We're not the ones killing you. You're starving. But why do we have to give you food? So they starved the people. They forced them to march on into the desert, which is exactly what they've done to these Gazans, moving them around all the time. They've confiscated their property or destroyed their property. They've destroyed their churches, their hospitals, their schools, and they've eradicated their entire cultural presence. That is exactly what Israel's trying to do. Now, Turkey denies, and Turkey did this to all three groups in various different forms. There was even some slavery and rape to the Assyrians. But the atrocities that were committed to these three groups of people between around 1913 to about 1922 or 23, that 10 years, it was really atrocious. And Turkey denies it. However, Turkey says it wasn't genocide. This was just casualties of war, civil war casualties. That's just what happens. It was a civil war. People were fighting, and it was casualties. That is obviously what Israel also claims. Like, well, it's an urban population. It's dense. They hide underneath all of their churches, schools, and mosques, and they hide. So, we just bomb where they hide, and it's not our fault. And that's basically what Israel says. So on one hand, now, Pat is very pro-Israel, very apologetic to Israel. He's lost a lot of supporters because of his stance on Israel. I think he's really kind of, started off his podcast as being like truth-telling. We're going to anti-establishment, just tell it like it is. And then when it came to Israel, Pat has really, I think, in a lot of ways, just really dropped the ball in a lot of ways and lost a lot of supporters because of his stance and a lot of credibility, unfortunately. But this whole interview was very much a softball interview for Netanyahu. I think Pat did ask good questions, but it was still softball, and Pat comes from the more sympathetic. Obviously, you can't secure an interview with Netanyahu unless you are friendly and sympathetic to him and his cause. I mean, that's the only way to get it. So anybody who Netanyahu sits down with, you can know for certain that that journalist or that host or whoever it is, that they are 1,000% on the side of Israel. So for the most part, it was a softball interview, but the fact that, then he brings up this genocide and not the Palestinian genocide that's being committed and not pushing back and saying, well, this sounds really eerily familiar. It is what it, I mean, what is it going to be? Meanwhile, Netanyahu does go on to say that the recent strike on Al Nasser Hospital, so just 2 days ago, Al Nasser Hospital in Gaza was hit. This was one of the last standing major hospitals. It wasn't just hit, however, it was strategically hit on the 4th floor. On a balcony was hit at the 4th floor of this hospital. Now, you have to then ask, if that floor was targeted, what was on that 4th floor that caused it to be targeted? Now, I'm going to show you graphic footage. So if you don't want to see bodies, I'm going to ask you right now to just close your eyes for about 30 seconds, okay? So this is the bombing of Al Nasser Hospital and some of the carnage after. Go ahead and close your eyes if you don't want to see this. But you can, those of you who are not looking, these are the bodies. I'm sorry. It's very grotesque. But I do want to just show just the aftermath of what Israel does, okay? Now I want to also I want to play this for you. You can open your eyes now, by the way. These people are going to get bombed, but we're not going to see bodies. Now, what has happened here is, so the first round of footage that I showed you was the hospital was the 4th floor was targeted and it was bombed. 9 minutes later, so people rush to help to see if they're survivors. Do they need help? They go to that same spot, and 9 minutes later, Israel bombs that same spot again. Now, Israel claims, like usual, that, this was an accident, right? What is it that Netanyahu actually says? He says, Israel deeply regrets the tragic mishap that occurred today at the Nasser Hospital in Gaza. Israel values the work of journalists, medical staff, and all civilians. The military authorities are conducting a thorough investigation. Our wars with Hamas terrorists, our just goals are defeating Hamas and bringing our hostages home. Okay, you say that, but if it was a mistake, you don't do it twice, 9 minutes apart. That's what you don't do if it's a mistake. Oops, targeted the wrong place, a hospital, the 4th floor. Specifically, what was going on that 4th floor? Well, it turns out, this is according to Middle East Eye, that this is where journalists would go because this is where they could get cell phones, they could get Wi-Fi connection, specifically the 4th floor of Al Nasser Hospital. And that's where it's bombed, and 9 minutes later, it's bombed again. So Middle East Eye says Palestinian journalist Abdel Rahman Al-Khalut posted a video on his social media highlighting the importance of Nasser Hospital for journalists working in Khan Yunis. Quote, since the beginning of the war, I've relied on this spot at Nasser Medical Complex as the only window to access the internet, he said. Today, this place was deliberately targeted, an attempt to silence our voices and stop us from documenting what is happening in Gaza. And this is the video that he posted. So I want to play this for you.
نتعصب عشان نرفع الصورة ونشتغل. عن جد كيف الوضع؟ كله تمام، كله تحت السيطرة. شفط لك يا مجد. ما شاء الله كبير. كمان الوضع لوز. هي كمان واحد. يعني كما تسمعون في الخلفية الآن اشتباكات عنيفة جدا.
So let me actually just back this up a little bit. I want to show you this so that you guys can see. See if I can get a good clean shot here. You can see all of these journalists sitting behind him. So this is the spot. Look at all those journalists. This is where they are trying to get cell phone. Okay? They're getting cell phone reception right there in that location. And this is where Israel bombs. And then 9 minutes later bombs it again and says, whoops, just an accident. Our bad. Sorry about that. 9 minutes apart. So, and Netanyahu's sitting there saying, oh, this is just an accident. How many accidents have they had to admit to? Israel has had to admit to so many different accidents. I mean, just from the various different ones that we could think of that they were claiming. So they had, well, for one, the hostages. Remember when they killed their own hostages waving a white flag and they said, oops, that was an accident. The World Central Kitchen convoy, that was another accident when they killed 7 aid workers, calling that one a grave mistake. The Rafah tent camp airstrike, that was also a whoops, our bad. That was just an accident. That killed dozens. People were lit on fire in that one. They also had the medics that were attacked. Remember the medics? And we saw the footage of the medics being totally attacked and killed. All the medics there was like a medical convoy going. One medical group got attacked. Another one showed up to help the group that was attacked, and they got attacked. And Israel said, "Oops, that was just an accident." How do you attack it twice and call it an accident? The Al-Mawasi strike that killed 1, injured 30, they called that technical errors. And now they're calling this a tragic mishap, is what Netanyahu is calling it. Never in the history of any war have we seen so many tragic mishaps. And these are just the ones that Netanyahu is willing to say, are bad. Sorry, we didn't mean to do that. Then there's all the other cases. Did they ever admit to, oops, sorry, our bad, when they killed that 5-year-old little girl that was in a car surrounded by her dead family waiting to be rescued? I can't even talk about that. I know you guys are just as disgusted as I am about this entire thing and about the complete lack of the devil here. I mean, in calling him that is almost being nice. But the devil here has killed so many people in a very short period of time, called it an accident. And we have just been watching this live stream to our phones night after night after night. And they're deliberately killing the journalists who are showing us those live streams. And that's the problem. That's what they're doing now, is that Netanyahu, as I mentioned, I believe it was last week, he has declared absolute war on the algorithms, on X, on Facebook, on journalists. And if you can't change the algorithms, because the algorithm, as we've seen, Grok has, got its lobotomy, and then it came back and was like, no, Israel's not committing genocide. And then about an hour later, Grok says, yes, it is. I've seen enough information in my 1 hour of being back from my lobotomy that, yes, I can say that they're still committing a genocide. So you can't sterilize the AI. They've been unable to do that. They've been unable to sterilize social media, especially when, social media is supposed to be for free speech, and Republicans have been really championing free speech. So they're not able to really censor it. So what he can do is just kill all the journalists. Just make sure the information doesn't even get out there in the first place. That way you don't have to rely on the algorithms. You don't have to rely on the lobotomies that you give the AI, right? Or you don't have to rely on just labeling everybody an anti-Semite to try to get them to silence. Just silence it at the source. And that's what he's been doing. Silence it at the source. These are all the times that he says, oops, our bad. Here's July 16th, Axios. This was, let me give credit to the person who put this out here. I pulled this from X. This was, I don't know who made this actually, but it was posted on this account, Haroon I-117. Israel says deadly Gaza church strike was a mistake after Trump call. IDF blames error for Gaza strike that killed children collecting water. This was July 13th, July 16th. Bloomberg, Israel fired warning shot at EU, China diplomats by mistake. Whoops. Independent Israel's military admits it made mistake over killing of Gaza medics. Israel says military shot dead U.S. Turkish woman by mistake. By mistake, Israel admits to publishing false photos of Hamas leaders arrested in Al-Shaifa. Israel admits killing 5 of its own young soldiers by mistake. Israel says its strike that killed aid workers was a mistake. Rights group says it was no anomaly. Israel admits to airstrike that killed 86 people at Gaza refugee camp was a regrettable mistake. A mistake. Israel targets Palestinians on bike, claiming it's an RPG. IDF mistakenly kills 3 Israeli hostages in Gaza. This is what we know so far. I mean, just whoops, they just have a shoot to kill anything that moves. And that is what, has become really increasingly clear throughout this whole thing. And now what's really become increasingly clear is that they're 1,000%, they are going after journalists. And these are some of the journalists who were killed in this latest strike. The second strike, when they hit it 9 minutes later, there were people helping, and a lot of those people helping were other journalists. So they killed a bunch of journalists in the first strike, and then the second strike, journalists were there because they were there, and they were the ones trying to run to help and document the horror. And of course, they got killed. So, by no mistake, this is no mistake. I think we all understand it's not a mistake, and that this is, in fact, a targeted killing, a genocide of even journalists, if you want to call it that. It's a genocide of the Palestinian people, it's a land grab, and it's a genocide of journalism. Maybe you've heard these studies, but testosterone in young men is drastically decreasing every decade. One major study in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found a healthy 22-year-old in 2000 had double the testosterone of a 22-year-old in 2025. So if you are in your 30s, your 40s, or your 50s, you might want to listen up. Meet Mars from The Wellness Company, a doctor-formulated nutraceutical designed to restore vitality without synthetic hormones or stimulants. Mars helps men to naturally increase testosterone, enhance circulation, and improve strength, focus, and sexual performance with Tonkat Ali, Tribulus, horny goatweed, yes, it's really called this, and zinc. This isn't about masculinity, it's about health. Low testosterone affects energy, motivation, fertility, muscle mass, mood, and future generations. So if you're looking for a boost, Mars will have you feeling like you're on another planet. Head to twc.health/Kim and use code Kim to get 15% off plus free shipping. Again, that's twc.health/Kim. Use code Kim to get 15% off and level up your performance today. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. It is free for you to watch. Again, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, KimIversonShow.com. See you there.